Thank you for joining us, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about sweets and snacks with the expo coming up later this month. Specifically, we're going to focus on some seeker and avoider ingredients and attributes that are really driving the category. And before we dive in, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Scott Dicker. I'm a marketing data analyst here at Spins. I've been with Spins for about 5 years and have had a role in identifying insights and trends throughout the industry. And I'm joined by Jake Nepper, who is a data product manager for Spin's product intelligence team. He has been with Spins for over 12 years now and has had a major hand in the development of new attributes, as well as a lot of the insights and trends presentations as well. Some of the key areas we're going to examine today is what attributes are driving consumers that they're really seeking out and also avoiding. We really got here, the sweets and snacks categories have been evolving from junk food and indulgences. These have really transformed into seeking out the natural and health conscious consumer. And now they fit into pretty much every diet tribe. Many ingredients, label claims, certifications are driving the innovation, and the conscious consumer is really leading the charge. And this includes things like new formulas, recipes, ingredient innovations, and some of the other things we're going to go over today are some of the major brands that have made this table stakes for the category, who you can check out at the show that are having new products, using these sought out ingredients, and also removing some of the avoided ingredients that were once prevalent in the categories. Jake, do you want to get us started here?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into those attribute seekers and avoiders that Scott was talking about, we just kind of want to take a quick look at category performance of key sweets and snacks categories over the past year. As you can tell, kind of looking at this chart, there were some bright spots. Jerky's up 19% over the past 52 weeks, while we have other categories like salty snacks, chips, pretzels, nuts, trail mix, also showing kind of higher than average growth for the total segment. If you do kind of look at some of those categories and see, what those growth percentages are, you can start to see sort of a trend here. Our salty snacks tend to sit in the top half of growth, while our sweet snacks tend to sit kind of in the bottom half. So, why is that, right? Well, first, social distancing and stay-at-home measures kind of wreaked havoc with key on-the-go segments, things like wellness bars and gums and mints. And one thing that we took note of, if you actually removed all gums and mints from the shelf-stable candy numbers, you'd be looking at tacking on roughly, an extra 4 percentage points to their 52-week growth. So that's a big impact there. But that said, things like gums and mints, they are back on the upswing, and those numbers are beginning to drift back to normal. Scott, this is, I know this is something that you've dug into in the past with a bunch of research, especially around the impact COVID measures have had in food and beverage over the past year. Is there anything that kind of jumps out at you here that I didn't mention?
Yeah, what's really jumping out here, and we're seeing it throughout the entire store, but it's also, playing a large role within sweets and snacks, is how specialty and premium products have really led a lot of the growth. So we saw with people staying home from restaurants, they still wanted that feeling of special and that indulgence that they could take home with them. So that's why we're seeing that kind of specialty and wellness positioning group in a lot of these categories driving sales. And so, while we do expect, while with the reopening and people getting back out there, that some of that at-home treats is going to return, that kind of share of the stomach is going to return to the restaurant. However, I think the baseline has been raised. As people are introduced to these products, it'll be harder to kind of go back to the less specialty ones. What do you think about that, Jake?
No, I think that's a great point. And, you're kind of hitting on something that, I'll talk about next. It's just like, consumers and shoppers just changing some of their purchasing habits, and the last thing, I'll mention here as to why, some of these sweets categories are experiencing lower growth is possibly just the types of product qualities or attributes that shoppers are seeking and avoiding these days. Sugars, they've gotten a bad rap. We've seen low carb become king, and that may have made it more difficult for some of these sweets categories to really keep up with some of their savory counterparts. But obviously, we'll unpack some of that further on in this deck and just see what kind of innovation is really helping these brands keep pace with today's shoppers.
Yeah, that sounds good. So let's jump into some sustainability attributes that our consumers are looking for.
All right, so this is our first batch of attribute seekers. So what we're looking at, as Scott mentioned, are just some key and common sustainability attributes found across our snacks and sweets categories. And the graphic on the left, that shows us how these attributes are performing across all of snacks and sweets categories. So, a key takeaway here is that we see attributes like fair trade and B Corp. We see them performing well, and that may tell us that shoppers are responding to products featuring, social movement and corporate responsibility. So maybe from a show perspective, definitely keep your eyes on these two, but also key in on some newer or emerging areas like upcycled or minority owned and women owned. These brands that, really feature those types of things and center themselves around those like social corporate responsibility aspects. They have a really unique way of connecting personally with the shopper, and that can really help foster loyalty.
Yeah, that personal connection seems to be very important with things, and it's great to see, as you mentioned, things like candy, where fair trade and B Corp are performing so much above the average for the attribute. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. And if you take a look on the right side of this, we did a quick pull out of those top performing categories in 3 of these areas. And something that kind of becomes evident here is that, attributes can have different levels of impact in different categories. Taking a look at organic over in nuts and trail mix is kind of like a perfect example of what we're talking about. While organic growth is low overall in sweets and snacks, look how powerful it becomes at certain category levels. Organic or really any attribute can provide, different levels of uniqueness or different levels of shopper importance in different categories. So having information like this can be a great launching pad just for more intensive trend analysis, or just helping to understand kind of where and why any given product quality is resonating and where it isn't, right? In other words, if you identify a product quality that shoppers are seeking, where will it have the most impact, or where will it be most sought after and provide that type of differentiation that shoppers are looking for?
Exactly. So every attribute's not going to hit each category the same. And one call out I do also want to mention is that we see label organic is actually showing a slight decline over the past 52 weeks. I think that has a lot to do with there's just so many other ways now, like you mentioned, for these brands to give across the sustainability message and a social movement message. So where you're talking about minority owned, women owned, these other attributes, B Corp, there's just other things that brands are doing right now that are attracting those same types of consumers.
Exactly. Especially when we look at, the natural products industry, it wasn't too long ago that, organic just really sat at the top, and it really was like the one and only beacon for key sustainability that kind of everybody saw it and everybody knew about. But over the past few years, we've seen many different branches of sustainability emerge. And like you mentioned, maybe that's a key reason why, organic has kind of stalled over the past couple of years.
Great. Yeah. And so sustainability continues to be a driver, but also, health and wellness is on the mind of everyone. So next, let's dive into some of these key wellness ingredient seekers.
All right. So like Scott mentioned, we're looking at wellness seekers. So, think attributes like probiotics, superfoods, protein, whole grains, etc. At first glance, like what we see across snacks and sweets, honestly, it's not terribly surprising that something like whole grains continue to resonate. Consumers get it and it's familiar. We also see superfoods up there towards the top as well. I kind of feel like it makes sense, especially as shoppers continue to seek, nutrient density, and really just any sense of this better for you functionality, especially from snacking options. Scott, I bet you're going to have something on this, but I think protein surprised me a bit, especially given the low carb, low sugar movement. So what we're looking at here is, products with 8 grams or more per serving are actually down almost 4% from last year. But, looking at that category level data on the right side, we see wellness bars kind of having that outsized impact on that negative growth. But, on the flip side, we see some incredibly strong growth for protein focused salty snacks and jerky.
Yeah, you really hit it on the head there. Protein continues to have, this great health halo, and it's spread across the store. A reason for this decline is, like you mentioned earlier, wellness bars really took a big hit. A lot of those are protein bars. So with people kind of staying home, not going to the gyms were closed. The protein bars are going to kind of be a lot of that. And we also see that with just snack bars as well, which a lot of them have now added protein. And I think this is a really important aspect of all these attributes. Whereas we mentioned early on that these categories, used to just be kind of thought of as junk food, a lot of it. And I think adding these wellness ingredients kind of remove that stigma around a lot of the unhealthy image that a lot of these categories had. By adding protein, by adding superfoods, by using whole foods and whole grains, you're really able to kind of change the perception of a cookie or a bag of chips by adding some of these functional ingredients, probiotics or something like that. So I think that has really been a driving factor in this category becoming something that is able to obtain kind of a health and wellness viewpoint at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's honestly, Scott, we've been with Spencer for the past, together for 5 years, and it's been really interesting to watch how some of these categories have evolved, just in the past 5 years. Subcategories like puffs, for example. The number of health and wellness focused products have just exploded in a category like that. So.
Absolutely. And as a little segue into the next slide, these snacks and sweets categories really being allowed in all these different types of diets is a relatively new revelation as well. So let's get into that.
Definitely. So what we're looking at here are SPINS's shopper-centric diet attributes. So what is being measured here? These attributes, they're not about capturing the small number of brands that are labeling their products with these various diets. Instead, SPINS is leveraging, package facts like ingredient statements, the nutrition fact panel, just to tell us if products actually qualify for certain diets, regardless of label claims. So basically, in a nutshell, this lights up far more products for analysis than label claims does. So anyway, taking a look at some of the data here, it looks like we have some pretty even-keeled, low impact growth numbers here across sweets and snacks. But one thing that we do want to highlight is the keto diet friendly attribute. So what we're looking at, overall is negative 2.5% growth across the board for keto friendly products. But it looks like a lot of that negative growth, can be attributed again, to some of our wellness bars and gums and mints. But on the flip side, we do see some nice growth for keto over in salty snacks and cookies. So there we go. There's a sweet category. It wasn't performing, up to, as well as some of our savory counterparts. But here's a nice pocket of growth indicating keto or low net carb products are resonating there.
And they're using some like alternative sweeteners there, Jake. Is it like mostly getting rid of sugar?
Yeah. So I mean, with some of like our keto-friendly cookies and snack bars, they'll be like an alternative source to some of the grains. But to your point, you're going to see a number of different sweeteners being leveraged, things like allulose, sugar, alcohol, even some of your artificial sweeteners at times. But you'll also see, like monk fruit, stevia, anything just to kind of help, reduce that net carb content.
Yeah, and then one other thing I think is really interesting, and it's a much newer segment. This kind of plant-based cheese as flavoring. So we're starting to see that pop up a little more, and that's something that I think is going to continue as more and more people, even for just an allergy reason, as well as the flexitarian aspect. Some of these traditional flavors, like the cheddar and sour cream, and also just like your normal cheddar flavors and stuff. We're going to be seeing a little more mastery of this flavor in a vegan way.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really fun call out. And I really like, kind of keeping our eye on this one. I feel like it's a great pocket of plant-based growth that often gets overlooked when discussing kind of that broader plant-based market as well.
Cool. And then we also are tracking some functional ingredients. So what can you tell us about how these are doing in sweets and snacks?
Well, the quick notes version here is that, functional mushrooms, so think like chaga, shiitake, lion's mane, they continue to show decent growth with salty snacks and jerky kind of really highlighting some of that innovation potential those ingredients have. We're also seeing probiotic infused products. They're hot right now. Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it was long ago that probiotics was practically non-existent to the sweets and snacks segment. It may have been in some like refrigerated wellness bars, but with some of the recent tech advances in the past few years, kind of ensuring that shelf stable viability, we've seen this market and demand for probiotic snacking really take off.
Yeah, no, you got it right there. So yeah, probiotics being out of the refrigerator and in these products has really helped it out. Another call out I want to do here is MCTs have really continued to growth, and that I think goes to show you what we were talking about that last about kind of this low carb and the keto having this high fat functional ingredient is really maintained importance.
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely kind of an extension off of that keto market, especially, you see, some of our wellness bars and gels where they're kind of adding, some of that fat back to help hit some of those keto macros. So,
Alrighty, so that will round us up for some ingredient and attribute seekers. But on the other side of the coin, there are attribute avoiders. So Jake, tell us a little bit about this.
all right. So first up is sensitivities, allergens, and intolerances. So, this is definitely a hot topic, just considering how savvy and in tune shoppers are with some of these concepts today. Shoppers, they really kind of have an endless array of ways of eating concepts, but, many of those concepts really do center around the attributes you see here on this slide. So, over in sensitivities and tolerances, we pulled out grain-free to kind of peek at that category level performance. And we did that because, while the overall growth number really isn't that compelling, grain-free, it really does remain kind of like this force to be reckoned with in categories where, that element grain-free creates a highly unique or differentiated product. So, again, this is like a huge pocket of growth in crackers, and there's cookie category again. In cookies, we're seeing like 27% growth compared to the overall cookie growth, which, I believe was at 2% on that previous slide.
Yeah, and crackers and cookies, I mean, those are products where just a few years ago they would all be have some grains in them, pretty much, right?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And then over in allergens, the quick highlight that we have here is just major 8 allergen free, and kind of where that is having the most impact. It looks like nuts and trail mix, obviously tree nuts are so prevalent there. Brands are having success with those allergen free products and, again, just creating that uniqueness and differentiation in that category.
Yeah, we're going to touch on some brands in a little bit that are doing this, but I think making them inclusive for everyone, as allergens seem to be more and more common, I think that's going to be a major call out going forward that's going to really benefit and differentiate brands. But it's not all about kind of actual allergens and sensitivities. Consumers are also kind of avoiding other ingredients. So let's get into what a clean label is.
All right, so here we're looking at clean label concepts and sugars. So clean label concepts, Scott, you mentioned this earlier. They've driven growth in sweets and snacks for years. Like you mentioned, just removing those artificial ingredients was kind of like the very start of that, better for you movement in this segment, and I think it probably began, a decade plus ago. But it's worth noting that, even in a category like candy, products without artificial preservatives, without artificial colors and artificial flavors, they are outpacing their non-clean counterparts by nearly 12 percentage points. And honestly, at this point in time, that wasn't exactly something I entirely expected. I figured it was more mature, that we wouldn't see that kind of difference in growth. But
That
I
that's
think
pretty
it's a welcome
remarkable
sight.
given the
Yeah.
size of the category. Sorry for cutting you off there.
Oh
Um,
no,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And, I don't think there's, what you'll get into later on, Scott, I don't think there's any shortage of new and innovative brands out there that are kind of like rooted into that type of ethos. So,
Yeah, and I think clean label in candy um, is going to continue to play a role. I think this is going to accelerate. And just going back to that overarching theme, kind of removing that unhealthy persona of the categories. Part of that is removing these avoided ingredients, where people are looking at it and they want to be able to recognize the names on the ingredient list.
mhm.
So a lot of the names that they can't pronounce or don't recognize are these artificial ingredients. So having a vitally clean label is going to attract those shoppers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of feel it's like the same thing over in sugars too. It's, um, having like that laundry list of ingredients with 8 different types of sugars being present, it does something to a consumer's perception when they see that type of ingredient statement. Um, and over in sugars, I don't think that, it's a secret that, shoppers are kind of looking to cut carbs and calories. And we're seeing brands in categories like nuts and trail mix, cookies, candy, have enormous success in, formulating their products with these natural low calorie sweeteners like monk fruit and stevia. I think it's important to mention here is that, it doesn't mean these products are sugar free. But we often see, a lot of brands just combine these low calorie sweeteners with regular sweeteners to make a more carb or calorie friendly product, just kind of cutting each just enough to make a difference for that better for you shopper.
Yeah, so then it's not just especially when we get into kind of snack bars, then it's not kind of a glorified candy bar with the sugar in there. But as we've just mentioned, candy is removing sugar as well. But I think that's one of the ways that these snack bars are differentiating themselves as well.
Absolutely. And, and retaining a little bit of that sugar, it always helps with taste and texture of the product, and et cetera. So,
Yeah, and especially when they're using things like organic sugar, there's other ways to kind of lessen the vilification of sugar. But these alternative sweeteners, especially these lower caloric ones, are really going to be driving a lot of the innovation.
absolutely.
So that will do it for avoiders. Next, we wanted to take a um, quick look at some of the categories and some of the brands that are going to be at the show. And then hopefully you guys can get out and meet them and try their products. And let's do it. So salty snacks, some of these have been around for a while, but it's worth calling out because they're doing things that the natural product consumers are still looking for. The Good Crisp company, one of the things that they make sure to highlight over and over is that they do use palm oil, but they use this sustainable one that's rainforest friendly, And again, they're removing those artificial colors and flavors to really make it a differentiated potato chip. Sonoma Creamery is, Jake, we've been watching this type of product actually for a few years now. This cheese crisp, sorry, a high protein snack and cracker that could be used with as a topping, can use as a standalone snack. It really plays to that low carb crowd. And I gotta tell you, I've been noticing in the grocery store now, these cheese crisps have entire segments of the store where, when we first found these products, I remember, it wasn't kind of sure where they were going to fall, but they've kind of carved out their own niche.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, the cheese crisp or like the hydrated cheese snack market, it has a ton of potential and a ton of applications that I think brands are just beginning to kind of get into, incorporating it into like a snack mix, and other types of traditional snacks. It gives it a bit of a different variety, but you're not introducing a ton of carbs, and that's what shoppers are looking for today.
Yeah, and it's a way to add protein in a very, very flavorful way. Um, adding in these cheese crisps. And then another brand that we wanted to call out is Papa's Pops. This is a skinless popcorn that's trans fat free, cholesterol free, and gluten free. And I'm actually excited about trying these. They're skinless, so the one thing I hate about popcorn is that it always gets stuck in your teeth. This is supposed to remove that problem. So this is another one to call out.
Yeah, and I could be wrong on this, so don't quote me. But I think products like that, like that skinless aspect of popcorn, also is great for people with certain digestive issues as well. So.
That's a great call out too. Let's take a look next at candy. So we spent a lot of time talking about candy. Removing some of the artificial ingredients out of traditional conventional candy like Project 7 and Yum Earth are doing. They're also really being forward that it's part of these diets, like that you can have these when you're following certain diets, plant-based or keto-friendly. There's Project 7 only has 3 grams of sugar in their gummies, really highlighting on the label about their no artificial ingredients. Organic is still a driver for a lot of these consumers. And then I also wanted to call out this endangered species. We're seeing oat milk and oat-based products really taking off everywhere. So they're using this one like a milk chocolate bar using oat milk though. So I think that's a very interesting call out. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these plant-based ingredients, make their way over here as well. Then taking a look into jerky and trail mix, Vital Clean, it continues to play a big role. We're seeing, these are ways when we're talking about getting protein, getting creative. So Sahel snacks, using beans and nuts as a mix. And then also being Vital Clean, and then going back to what we were going to at the very beginning, these more kind of specialty flavors like the Creole flavor for the snack mix is going to be very important. Biltong continues to kind of be an interesting view into jerky. These air-dried beef snacks, grass-fed, as you can see from both Country Archer and Strive, depending on the category, plays more of a role. And then also, Biltong here is, 16 grams of protein per serving, 0 grams of sugar. So it's going to continue to hit that low carb, high protein trend. And then I also wanted to call out Country Archer, a bigger brand that's, no nitrates, no preservatives, no MSG. It's really kind of making that that kind of table stakes. We used to not see bigger brands like this go for those removing those avoiders.
Yeah, definitely. And you're calling out a couple of jerky brands here. It's been an interesting kind of evolution for some of these brands. They first started out as paleo. That's where we saw some of these sugars disappear or alternative sugars get into place. But, as that market kind of waned and that maybe claim didn't carry as much weight anymore, we saw them kind of move into that keto aspect. So, it's kind of a natural progression with the sugars here with these guys. And I
Yeah,
also think it's great that you called out beans on Sahel snacks. That's definitely an aspect that gets into a ton of different categories as well. It's definitely an ingredient trend that has been happening across food and beverage. So,
yeah, great way to add plant-based protein, right?
yeah.
And then, it feels a little odd to be talking about jerky and not mention that huge trend of plant-based jerky. But it's worth noting that, most of the growth, beef jerky is still a very popular product. It's an easy, on-the-go protein snack. And so while these plant-based jerkies are driving a lot of growth, and they're going to be carving out more and more of a niche, a lot of these beef jerkies are still doing very well. Taking a look at some of these kind of wellness and snack bars and cookies, Super Nola is one that I like. It's organic, fair trade. And then going back to what we were saying, you could still use sugar as a sweetener. When it's organic coconut sugar, consumers are a little more drawn to it. And also a variety of certifications, paleo and everything like that. It falls into those diet tribes as well. Um, Major 8 allergen-free Blake's seed-based bar. So a lot of the bars that we've been seeing, if they're not using added protein from powder or something, they like to use nuts. This is a nut-free version. It goes by right in the name. They use seeds instead to add kind of a unique texture um, and kind of just an alternative source there.
Yeah, and I really like, Blake's. It seems like a really great product. It's obviously, so many of these, that of a similar bar types to like what Blake's has there. They're all containing tree nuts and some other types of, allergens. So getting like that major 8 allergen free, it's seed based. It's a great uniqueness to that category.
Yeah, and I think, let me know what you think, Jake, but I think we're going to be seeing seeds a lot more utilized because they don't have that same allergen impact as nuts, as well as the beans that we talked about. I think, those are going to be incorporated a lot more into all types of products.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and then not to be outdone, we do have cookies that are for kind of a keto crowd. And what's the unique thing about super fat too is they also include another, still thriving functional ingredient of collagen, which kind of makes them a unique cookie. And then to finish off, we wanted to highlight some innovative new brands that really haven't made their way to a lot of the mass channel yet. Um, Jake, just jump in whenever you want to highlight a few of them. We'll just do some quick hits. Dandy's caught my eye as a gelatin-free marshmallow. I think that's kind of a niche there as well. Green Mustache. You're the expert dad in this, but to get your kids to eat some vegetables, what better way than to kind of have that hidden vegetable trend that we've been seeing in a fun shape like a mustache too. I guess that helps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason this one got on here. I'd say another one, that caught my eye was Rome Snacks. I think it's like the perfect timing for a brand like this. It's the mushroom crisp. It's been hot all over, all of cross food and beverage. So kind of getting like that whole food, real type of crisp over in chips and snacks. I think that one has a lot of potential as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of adds a new element to kind of that vegetable and alternative chips made from mushrooms. I believe it's shiitake mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I believe
And
so.
then I think we're just seeing mushrooms, as a functional ingredient, as a supplement, um, really kind of expanding across a lot of these categories. And speaking of which, Dream Pops is another brand that we have on here. They have a frozen snack, and one of their ingredients actually has lion's mane mushroom in there. So a nootropic mushroom, you wouldn't really think to see in a frozen snack. But
Yeah, definitely. Like mushrooms and your dessert, probably not the most appealing thing, but especially when we get into that functionality and like that's where it gets its appeal. That adaptogenic quality, and I think that's where consumers can really latch on to maybe that stranger ingredient in categories you wouldn't expect. So.
Exactly. And then another thing we've been seeing, called out in a lot of these, smaller natural brands and it's not a surprise when we're talking about sustainability, is a lot of the emphasis on packaging. So we're seeing, going back to your Rome snacks, I know they use compostable packaging. Green Mustache, going back to them, I know that they upcycle their ingredients for local farmers. So it goes back to that kind of building that personal connection that we talked about way at the beginning. Are there any other brands you want to call out?
Kind of maybe on that same theme, you have Kiowa Life, direct trade, regenerative, organic, the notes that we have there, really definitely fitting that, more modern sustainability concept that shoppers are after.
Great. And for all these other brands, make sure to check them out at the show, try their products, and that will wrap us up for our Seekers and Avoiders Sweets and Snacks. I will be attending the show. I would love to meet with you guys. For any more information, you can either contact your SPINS representative, email us at growth@spins.com, or if you'd like to meet with me at the show, you can email me at sdicker@spins.com. Thank you. Bye, guys.